Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, can you see the slides clearly? Perfect, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jaden Haflia, and I'm a fourth-year PhD student and graduate fellow at the Faculty of Education at Western University. My topic today is based on a reflective paper discussing critical race theory, intersectionality, and students' capital in the ESL classroom. In the presentation today, I'll cover the following points. First, I'll discuss some important terms such as capital, critical race theory, and intersectionality. Afterwards, I'll highlight the connection between critical race theory, intersectionality, and the TESOL field, how to use these concepts in the ESL classroom to introduce race, culture, and identity. And finally, I'll offer recommendations for future research. Bourdieu 1986 defined capital as accumulated labor, which when appropriated on a private, i.e. exclusive basis by agents or groups of agents, enables them to appropriate social energy in the form of reified or living labor. Bourdieu 1986 and Yoso 2017 also discussed the different types of capitals or assets, such as social, cultural, economic, and linguistic capitals. These capitals and resources allow individuals to progress in life and improve their status. However, not all capitals are viewed equally, and some are even viewed as less or deficient. And to further clarify this point, I'll further focus on linguistic capital. Linguistic capital refers to fluency in and comfort with a high-status worldwide language, which is used by groups who possess economic, social, cultural, and political power and status in local and global society. Linguistic capital is also connected to multiple forms of capital, such as cultural, economic, and educational capitals. However, these capitals can easily disadvantage minorities as they do not possess the majority's linguistic capital, and their own capital is viewed as deficient. For this reason, Phillips in 2016 highlights why majority groups opt for the dominant language because it is felt that this linguistic capital will serve their personal or professional interests best. Such deficit view negatively affects local languages, and Blomack 2010 highlights the important role of local languages and how they represent local repositories of knowledge, and these languages are crucial for understanding the local world. She also underlines that local meaning is lost with every language that disappears. Skutnak-Kenyus and Cummins 1988 discuss how the negative image disseminated about bilingual education can lead to language attrition, and a similar result can happen due to the deficit view of different languages. Such negative effects can lead to complete loss of L1, and in some cases can negatively affect the relation between parents and their children due to children's loss of their first language. Critical race theorist Kimberly Crenshaw was the one who coined the term intersectionality in 1989, and she explained that it refers to how multiple variables can intersect, leading to affecting certain individuals more than others, such as the intersection between race, gender, religion, and disability. Gilbert and Parker 2015 also defined intersectionality as how multiple forms of inequality and identity interrelated in different contexts and over time. Intersectionality has been used in many fields, including history, sociology, and philosophy. And according to Shaw, Crenshaw, and McCall 2013, its integration of multiple variables exposed how single-axis thinking undermines legal thinking, disciplinary knowledge production, and struggles for social justice. Crenshaw 1995 and Damoun 2011 explained that intersectionality depicts how everyone suffers from racism differently based on the variables that intersect in them. For example, a Muslim woman wearing the hijab suffers from racism differently than a Muslim woman not wearing the hijab or a Muslim man. As for critical race theory, Delgado and Stefancic 2001 explained that critical race theory represents how race, racism, and power interconnect, and the theory underlines the importance of fighting for minorities' rights. Different researchers discussed critical race theory and its key tenets, and they mainly highlighted five core principles that the theory evolved around. The first tenet underlines critical race theory's role in centralizing race and racism, while at the same time including other variables that intersect with them, such as citizenship, class, and identity. Another tenet is connected to challenging the majority's view and having minorities' voices heard. The third tenet relates to advocating for social justice and valuing experiential knowledge. And here I mean by experiential knowledge, the oral knowledge such as the one represented by indigenous groups or the stories that people of color narrate about the injustices they face. Another tenet of critical race theory evolves around uncovering the institutional and ideological racial purpose behind the colorblind myth of merit and individualism. Finally, the fifth tenet underscores critical race theory's role in highlighting the importance of discussing race and the inequality and injustices faced by people of color, and underlining that colorblindness inhibits these discussions. The relation between critical race theory and TESOL was highlighted by Legit 2014, who explains that there is a connection between three key tenets of critical race theory and TESOL. The first tenet is racism and linguicism. And in critical race theory, racism is viewed as part of everyday life, which can be reflected in the TESOL field where linguicism, according to Leggett 2014, has become an ordinary permanent fixture of life for English language learners who routinely encounter discrimination based on language proficiency and accent. The term was coined by Skutnap-Kangas and Philipson, and Skutnap-Kangas defines it as ideologies, structures, and practices which are used to legitimate, effectuate, regulate, and reproduce an unequal division of power and resources between groups which are defined on the basis of language. The second connection between critical race theory and TESOL is related to the colonial history and the importance of knowledge about it and understanding how it affects individuals and communities. The third point is related to the importance of narratives in both critical race theory and TESOL. These narratives play an important role in representing different identities and reflecting personal experiences, which provides an opportunity for individuals, including ESL learners and teachers, to voice their opinions and show their identity. D'Angelo 2018 underlined the importance of being informed of racism and that one should consider racism a matter of life and death, as it is for people of color. Discussions of such topics should be introduced in early age. And a study conducted by Clark and Clark 1963 highlighted that in addition to children aged 5 to 7 showing awareness of racial differences and racial identity, there is also the awareness and acceptance of the existing cultural attitudes and values attached to race. The study underlines how important it is to introduce concepts such as race, racism, whiteness, and color to children, as according to the authors, by the age of 5, the child is aware of the fact that to be colored in contemporary American society is a mark of inferior status. They have already formed an understanding of color and which color is preferred by society. Another study by Montero, DeFranca, and Rodriguez 2009, in which they investigated children aged 6 to 7 and 9 to 10 who were like white children, giving money to allocate to black children with supervision of a white adult in some cases and the absence of the adult in others. And the results showed that the younger white children discriminated against black children with or without the presence of the adult. Older children, however, discriminated only when there was no adult present. The results reached by the authors prove that older children learned how to hide their discriminatory behavior with age, and they did not become less racially biased as some might presume. Discussing topics related to race, racism, and whiteness is not an easy task, as some might be offended by such discussions and view it as a form of racism, which is a sign of white fragility. In her book White Fragility, Robin DiAngelo discussed how the mere suggestion that being white has meaning often triggers a range of defensive responses, such as anger, silence, defensiveness, and how these responses reinstate white equilibrium as they repel the challenge, return our racial comfort, and maintain our dominance within the racial hierarchy. Such fragility has been working against minorities for years, and it is crucial to introduce concepts such as race, racism, and color, and using theories such as critical race theory and intersectionality in the classroom to offer not only children but also teachers with the correct understanding of these terms and assist educators in creating an inclusive learning environment where all identities, backgrounds are appreciated and respected. Also, this should assist in bringing up children with a new and different mindset that should hopefully bring about change in their families, societies, and countries in the future. Despite the need for critical race theory and intersectionality in the TESOL field, there is not enough research conducted on the topic, and educators and schools are not very welcoming of such concepts since discussions of topics such as race, ethnicity, and power relations usually evokes racism, which is often interpreted as overt forms of bigotry rather than structural or institutional inequalities, and this undertone tends to prevent open dialogue. This apprehensive attitude towards the discussion of race and similar topics is shared by both teachers and students, as they were both not offered the discourse or approaches to get beyond fear and defensiveness to engage to the more substantive issues about race. According to Kaboda and Len 2006, such discussions about race and related variables can assist in understanding identity formation in the ESL classroom, highlight the changes needed in teaching methods, and the action needed to be taken by policymakers and educators. Understanding and acknowledging the intersections between race, culture, language, and identity in the ESL classroom is essential in creating and assisting teachers in creating and providing students with an inclusive and supportive learning environments. According to Chan and Kami 2020, the presence of educators who have been socialized to avoid race-related topics disconnects them from students who are confronted with their racial identity daily. And to tackle this specific issue, it is crucial to raise teachers' critical consciousness and critical self-reflection. Before applying critical race theory and intersectionality in the ESL classroom, teachers need to reflect on their own race, privileges, and biases to be able to weave in race and race-related themes consciously and critically in the classroom. As according to Chan and Kami 2020, being able to see and act against inequity is not something one achieves, but is a habit requiring constant practice. A suggested first step to start such reflexive and critical process is exploring Glasgow's 2017 Levels of Inclusive School Communities chart and checking where an educator falls on the continuum. Once this step is determined, further reading and research on race and race-related topics can begin. Glasgow's chart contains different elements such as school communities and their philosophy, policies, practices, and curriculum, and pedagogy, and it provides a description of the level of inclusivity on a continuum ranging from most exclusive to most inclusive. The first step for teachers to create such a learning environment is by understanding their students' needs and being aware of their diverse background. This understanding can be achieved through the application of culturally responsive teaching and social justice education. As for culturally responsive teaching, Matthias 2013 defines it as an approach for reintegrating knowledge that was initially marginalized due to systemic racism. This approach uses the cultural characteristics, experiences, and perspectives of ethnically diverse students as conduits for teaching them more effectively. Another approach to introduce race-related topics in the classroom can be through social justice education. Hackman and Lucia 2004 defined social justice education as an educational philosophy committed to equity and social change. It depends on promoting three key goals, which are social responsibility, student empowerment, and the equitable distribution of resources. The authors explained that social justice education encourages students' inclusion and participation in community by promoting their agency and inclusion, which makes them feel safe and valued for who they are. In describing a different experience, those not of the dominant culture can participate in creating a narrative that is visible to all and perhaps alter perceptions in their community and in the larger culture. This quote by Williams 2004 underlines the importance of narratives for minorities, which will be the focus of the following slide. One way to incorporate and introduce different cultures in the language classroom can be through literature, where teachers choose books that present cultures and different characters. Using these multicultural books with students can offer rich information on individuals from different backgrounds, whether they are linguistic, cultural, ethnic, or religious. However, it's important when choosing these books that these books should be of high quality and from different genres, with illustrations that accurately depict community or culture. They should also offer genuine dialogues where minority and majority groups are presented with absence of tokenism and stereotyping. D'Angelo 2018 reflected on the concept of tokenism, discussing how schools resort to Black and Asian authors only during Multicultural Authors Week and Black History Month, and how these authors are seen only as Black or Asian writers and not just as writers. But when we are not looking for the Black or Asian perspective, we turn to white writers, reinforcing the idea of whites as just human, people of color as particular kinds of humans. For this reason, teachers need to be careful when choosing and using different books, and they also need to stay away from books that showcase minorities as the other, celebrating them as individuals detached from their larger linguistic and racial communities, as this could possibly result in the narratives being a form of tokenism and could potentially reinforce a worldview that does not address the systemic and cultural constructions of race. One way to avoid tokenism when using literature with ESL learners can be achieved through critical literacy, which can assist learners in critically exploring and understanding their racial identities. Compared to traditional literacy, which focuses on teaching literacy skills, critical literacy provides a framework for asking critical and thought-provoking questions that relate to the reader and society. An example of using critical literacy in the classroom can be seen in Boy's 2017 study, where an ESL teacher consciously planned and selected film segments that focused on identity and identity labels and connected them to students' linguistic and cultural background. These students would engage in a literacy cycle consisting of a read-aloud activity, followed by a movie segment, and finally a reflective writing activity using elicitation questions while providing space for discussion throughout the cycle. Roy 2017 highlighted that teachers have an important role in making these discussions happen, because without them consciously teaching these themes, encouraging discussions, and providing space, the students will not have the opportunity to critically reflect on their identities, ethnicities, race, and languages. The study also proved how teachers could conduct conversations about race, ethnicity, and language use in ways that honor children's perspectives. Using storytelling and counter-storytelling can be a way for ESL learners to name the challenges that they are facing and break their silencing. And as Delgado and Stefancic 2001 mentioned, powerfully written stories and narratives may begin a process of adjustment in our system of beliefs and categories by calling attention to neglected evidence and reminding readers of our common humanity. Another way for including narratives in the classroom was suggested by Nero 2005, and it involves students recording stories in their communities and creating dialectical and bilingual vocabulary to share and compare with other classmates. These stories can provide an opportunity for ESL learners to learn not only about language and culture, but it can also be an introduction to problems faced by different community members and power relations between communities. Students using these narratives to tell their stories and the stories of their possibly marginalized communities and the challenges they face can be a form of counter-storytelling, which is one of the key elements of critical race theory. To better incorporate and introduce race-related concepts in the ESL classroom, More research is needed on how to apply critical race theory and variables such as race, culture, and identity in the ESL classroom. Action research is also required to design activities and explore their efficacy. Awareness of what critical race theory and intersectionality is crucial, which can be accomplished through workshops for teachers, reflexivity on teachers' own identity, and concrete application of minorities' culture, language, and different backgrounds in the classroom through curricula. And this actually brings me to the end of the presentation, and these were the resources I used. Thank you so much, and I'm ready now to take your question.
Thank you so much, Shadin. Yes, please come forward, and if you have any questions. We actually had a very short discussion in the chat. I thought what you mentioned about ESL teachers being socialized to not bring up race-related topics was so true. And I asked, whether colleagues had seen this, in our teaching materials, in any course books. And Tiffany commented that it's not just ESL, it's in all teachers as well. There's a lot of material and content that probably doesn't help either. So yeah, that's something that came up in the chat discussion.
Thank you for sharing that.
Hi, this is Tiffany. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I just want to thank you for your presentation. I'm in my doctorate studies right now at Binghamton University in New York. And in one of my courses, we're just starting to talk about critical race theory. So I thought this was great. And with the comment that I put, it just reminds me I forget where I was looking it up, and it was like a picture from like a child's history textbook, but it was like an Egyptian pharaoh, but they were completely like whitewashed, and it looked like a white man that was Egyptian. And I was like, that's not right. And it kind of made me think of that when I was writing that comment. And definitely in my class, we talked about how like a lot of, at least in the US, a majority of the teachers are white females, and how like having those race related discussions can be for someone like myself, who is a white female too, that doesn't understand or know that know the situations that these students might be coming from. Like having those discussions is tough, but I think, like you said, owning your own things is really important.
Thank you so much for sharing. Actually, when it comes to like these kind of ideas of whitewashing, it's not just like textbooks. You can find it in movies and TV series. And we actually had originally from Egypt, and we had a TV series that was like kind of like pulled out of the market because like they also had the depiction of pharaohs in a kind of like a strange in a different way. And also they were like, they brought actors that were like they were Egyptian, but they were fairly white and like lighter hair color. So I guess like yes, it affects like both whether it's written or like visuals. And that's why for teachers it's quite important to first of all understand these different contexts or concepts and know how to apply them in your own classroom. Because sometimes like bringing out these discussions or maybe specific books in the classroom without having the correct understanding can make like larger problems, because you might be asked a question and then you're not able to respond to it well. For example, you don't have the background, or maybe you say a comment that at the end ends like offending the student. And that's why I mentioned in the presentation how important it is to have workshops and include in curricula and also in courses for pre-service teachers on how to like what are these kind of like concepts and what do they stand for, how to introduce them in the classroom, and how to use them with ESL learners, because you need to understand that also ESL learners might not have the language to understand what you're saying. So that will need, maybe it's a difficult term. You'll need to simplify and use resources that would assist them in understanding these concepts, and hopefully, like changing maybe like their mindsets in the future.
Thank you, Shadin. We have a few questions in the chat now, and John has also raised his hand. There are some questions that are about whether you have any recommendations for children's books that can help with teaching this theory.
For the books, like if whoever sent the question, if they can comment on the application. I actually was just like last year I was assisting in an like an English language learners course, and I have a list of different books. So I can just share the Word document with them so that they can take a look at them and see if they're suitable for their context.
That would be amazing. Shall we take John's question, and then there's one more question in the chat?
Hi there. Thank you so much. This has been a very interesting discussion. So let me explain who I am and where I am. I'm on Long Island. I'm a teacher of TESOL. I'm a white male. And I continue to do the self-reflection that you've talked about in terms of my own deficiencies and outlook or understanding of race and equity. And I continue to do that. My question really revolves around what I see in my district is groups, minority groups, minority language groups, not being so involved in the school community. Now that may have there may be a lot of reasons for that, but it would seem to me that if these groups were able to somehow connect more to the school district in terms of an organization or even diversity sort of groups or committees, I don't see too much of representation, and so I have a feeling that this important voice is missing. And if you really want to move forward, I believe in healthy critical race discussions, you need the participation. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that, or maybe ways that you could suggest of how people can get involved in that.
Well, I guess like sometimes the reason for people not to be involved, that maybe they don't feel welcomed in the school community. Sometimes they feel like, you know, their voices like are not going to be heard. And also, if you think of maybe like parents of ESL learners, maybe they don't actually have the language to be able to participate in these kind of discussions. So I believe like your point is valid, of course. However, maybe like the schools also need to reach out to parents. And if like maybe if there is a linguistic barrier or maybe some misconceptions or maybe like, you know, kind of like ideas or negative backgrounds that they have with the school or the teachers, maybe they can start working on that. And also maybe like if the school has a representation of instructors or teachers who speak different languages, they can play an important role in doing that. For example, using these instructors or teachers to work with these parents and understand their fears, understand why they're not participating in these discussions. And from these kind of discussions, hopefully we'll be able to kind of get to like a middle ground where these parents, instructors, and the school system, like they're working together in order to make the change.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I just one more comment. Sorry. I do agree with that. I do also think that organization and numbers are important regardless if you can speak the language or not. Once you begin to organize, then and have numbers, then I believe people really feel the need to listen. But thank you.
Thank you. And unfortunately, we are at a time at the end of our session now. Can I please encourage everyone to get in touch with Shadin via the Hoover app? There's actually a messaging system there. Shadin, so many people are asking for your research list, for recommendations for reading, and of course the list that you just mentioned. So I hope you don't mind if people are contacting you via the app to get those resources from you.
No problem at all. It's my pleasure.
Well, thank you so much to every. Oh, no, we're so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for that presentation. I myself learned a lot from it, so I'm really grateful. And to everybody, the next session's actually started. So if you want to pop over to the next session on your list, you're welcome to, or to join us in the sponsors area.
Thank you, Nafisa. Take care. Thank you everyone for attending.
Bye.
Bye.